This time we're going to have our invocation and our pledge. The invocation will be led by Officer Schofield from the Aiken Public Safety, and then John McMichael, our Vitality Manager, will say our invocation. So I guess John McMichael's first with the invocation, and then the pledge by Officer Schofield. Good evening, John.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you and we honor you tonight, and we thank you for the privilege that we have of living in this wonderful city, this wonderful country, and the freedom that we have to come together to decide things that are important to our community. Father, we just pray your blessings on our council, on our public officials that serve you daily, Father. We pray for our men and women who put their life on the line every day to protect us in this city, our public safety. We pray for all those that serve this community in the city of Aiken as employees of the city, Father. We pray for our citizens too, Father, that the benefits that we all have, that we enjoy, or continue. Father, we just ask you to bless this time together tonight. Give us wisdom as we deal with the issues of this community. We just ask you to continue your blessings on our community. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, John. And this time we're going to have Officer Schofield come up, lead us in our pledge. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How y'all doing?
Very good.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Officer Schofield. I'd like to go over the guidelines of our meeting at this time. Meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city is conducted. As such, disciplined, honorable, and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is expected. During public hearing, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. If you wish to speak, raise your hand and I will recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from council are posed to the speaker. We appreciate everyone adhering to our guidelines. At this time, I'd recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Ebner, for additions or deletions to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does any council person have any changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the agenda as stated.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. We have a second. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. The minutes were distributed from our previous council members, council meetings to the members earlier. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Mr. Mayor, accept.
Councilwoman Price, second. Mr. Moki, thank you. All right, any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous, thank you. We move now to presentations. We have a presentation by Friendship Baptist Church to the city of Aiken.
Reverend T.C. Edwards.
That's right, Mr. Reverend Edwards. Appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And I will say I got to enjoy the sunrise Easter service at your church.
We're glad to have you there.
I know some of the members there probably slept in that morning, but it was very nice. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming and being part of the service. Good evening. To the Honorable Rick Osborne, Mayor, and our City Administrator, John Clem, and to all the Aiken City Council members here representing the Friendship Baptist Church. On November 18th, 2016, we celebrated our 150 years of existence. From 1866 to 2016, we celebrated 150 years. Commemorating this event meant so much to the community, to our friends, especially our members. And one of the most prized accomplishments for the anniversary was the publication of the church's history in a limited edition book entitled The History of Friendship Baptist Church of Aiken, South Carolina, celebrating 150 years, 1866 to 2016. This production was a 3-year project, and I'm going to ask those that were part of this committee to stand. The authors include Joy Bradley, Audrey Ogletree, Betty Rucker, and Leroy Myrick, research assistant and photographer. Thanks to the cooperation of many public entities, including the City of Aiken Archives, Aiken Standards Archive, Aiken County Public Library, Aiken County Museum, and the University of South Carolina, South Carolinian Library, we were able to fill in the gaps of our history, which has been passed down through the years. We discovered that our founder, the Reverend John Phillips, was appointed as a trustee to the School District 1 here in Aiken, and also a member of the Aiken City Council for 20 consecutive years. We were also able to verify with the Pine Lawn Cemetery Board Reverend Phillips' burial plot, which is located in the Pine Lawn Cemetery here in Aiken, South Carolina. And on behalf of myself and your very own Councilwoman Leslie B. Price, who is a valuable member of our church, and we love her dearly, and the Friendship Baptist Church, please accept this history book to be placed in the City of Aiken Archives for historical preservation. Please know that we are thankful for all the Lord has done for us over the years, and we pray that His continued blessings will be upon you and the council members. Thank you for helping us to make this history available to the Aiken community. Yours truly, Reverend Clinton Edwards Jr., who pastor and the 150th Anniversary Committee and the entire Friendship Baptist Church. I want to present you with this book.
That's terrific. Thank you, Reverend Edwards.
Can we have the committee member wants to come forward as well? Thank you.
Well, we want you and I get in the center of it. Guys, come on out here in front of me. Don't hide behind the podium. That's our job. That's our job. Well, I've been waiting for this book to come out. I heard about it. I guess it's a celebration.
Yes, sir.
And I'm excited to get a chance to look through that. So it will make the archives, but I'm probably going to read it first, if that's all right.
That's all right.
And I will buy a copy too. But Reverend, thank you for all your church does for our community. And I think it's terrific that we now have this history to say from time on exactly what this church has meant to the people of this church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If I will say, 3 years is a long time to work on any project, and I will tell you that this committee that came forward worked in harmony. And it's hard to get people to work 3 years in harmony, but that is a good Christian group that's working together. So thank you for what you did with researching that history. It's interesting if you don't have your history, you can misquote some things. We've misquoted some things as a result of not having that history recorded. So thank you, Joy, and the team for doing that.
And if I may ask the committee or the pastor, is there a place so people who may want a copy of this might can go out and...
Yes, I would like to say that we have, out of 300 books published, only 66 left. So if you would like to have a copy, don't tarry. That's it, go on my page. But we are located at 515 Richmond Avenue East. The big church there on the corner with the pretty steeple. And I'm there from 8 until 2, Mondays through Fridays. And we're here every Sunday. We've been at 9 o'clock until about 1:30.
So individuals can go by the church or call the church office probably. Very good. Friendship Baptist Church history. Thank you so much. Next, we have a proclamation for Peace Officers Memorial Day, and I'm going to recognize Councilwoman Diggs to read this.
Peace Officers Memorial Day Proclamation. Whereas the Congress
and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and whereas the members of the Aiken Public Safety Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and the freedoms of the citizens of our community, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement officers, and that law enforcement officers recognize their duty to serve the people of this community by protecting them against violence and disorder. And whereas the law enforcement officers of the City of Aiken Public Safety Department unceasingly provides a vital public service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Aiken City Council asks that all flags on city buildings be flown at half-staff on May 15, 2017, in recognition of Peace Officers Memorial Day, and in memory of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty, and to honor those law enforcement officers presently serving this community. And it's signed by Mayor and all members of this council.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Diggs, would you mind joining me down front? I'm going to ask the chief, and I think I'd like Officer Schofield to come along with you if he would. Chief, this is something done nationally.
It is.
Next under presentations is a proclamation I'm going to read. And this is kind of special because the person receiving this proclamation and this kind of thank you was unaware of it. So I'm just going to start reading it and maybe they'll realize it. But whereas the City of Aiken has 176 parkways as part of our downtown grid, and whereas these parkways greatly contribute to the character and charm of our great city, and whereas the tireless work and effort of one of Aiken's fine citizens is reflected in the condition of the parkways of Barnwell Avenue from Greenville Street to Lawrence Street, and Greenville Street to Edgefield Avenue, and Edgefield Avenue to Lawrence Street. That's a lot of area, isn't it? And whereas this young at heart volunteer has impressed, inspired, and motivated other neighbors to be more conscientious of parkways conditions, now therefore let it be resolved that I, Rickon Osmond, Mayor and the City Council of the City of Aiken, South Carolina, do hereby recognize Miss Betty Young as an unsung hero for her selfless care of our parkways and city, for as she says, just doing the Lord's work. And this is done on the 8th day of May in 2017. So Miss Betty, thank you for taking care of our parks, and we appreciate it. Something that your neighbors got just to say thank you to you.
Oh, thank you, neighbors.
Well,
Thank you.
Well, they left it in my seat, so I wondered why they gave me a pink bag. And then somebody told me, but thank you for what you do and inspiring neighbors and council and reminding us that if we can all just do the Lord's work, right?
Yes, he
So-
said, I gave you a good earth, take care of it. So as what I think.
The meeting after Earth Day, that's a pretty good quote. So I'm going to hand you this, and it's signed by all of council and myself.
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate this
Well, we
with all
appreciate
my
you.
heart. I never expected all this attention, but thank you, and thank you, and thank you again.
Well, I think that's what makes it so special, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you. You'll-
You're doing boards and committees first. You're doing boards and committees first.
Just makes you feel good, doesn't it? Thank you. Moving down to old business. Number 1 is approval of appointments and discussion of appointees to various city boards, commission, and committees. I'll look to Mr. John Clem for comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council has 14 pending appointments to fill vacancies on different city boards, commissions, and committees. 4 appointments are presented for council's consideration and vote this evening. Councilman Hamoki has recommended the reappointment of Andrea Gregory to the Arts Commission, Martin Buckley to the Building Codes Appeals Committee, Linda Lucas to the Senior Commission, and Regina Brackett to the Accommodations Tax Committee. If reappointed, Andrea Gregory's term on the Arts Commission would expire April 11, 2019. Martin Buckley's term on the Building Code Appeals Committee would expire May 12, 2018. Linda Lucas's term on the Senior Commission would expire on March 14, 2019. And Regina Brackett's term on the Accommodations Tax Committee would expire March 25, 2019. For council consideration is the reappointment of Andrea Gregory to the Arts Commission, Martin Buckley to the Building Codes Appeals Committee, Linda Lucas to the Senior Commission, and Regina Brackett to the Accommodations Tax Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Is there a motion to accept these nominations?
I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any names to be moved for consideration at our next meeting? Yes, sir. Mr. DeWalt.
I unfortunately have to announce the resignation of my appointee to the Energy and Environmental Committee, Melanie Tanachain, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's leaving the area. She's done a wonderful job, and that committee, you see the quality of their work on Earth Day, and those of you that were able to go saw what a great job they did. I would like to appoint in Melanie's place Dr. Elise Fox to the Energy and Environmental Committee.
Very good. Any other nominations to be considered at our next meeting? All right. Thank you, sir. Moving down old business. Number 2 is the second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone property at 740 Teague Street from single-family residential RS10 to limited professional LP. By title, an ordinance to rezone certain property owned by a Rural Health Services, Inc. from residential single-family RS10 to limited professional LP. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilman Barr. Councilman Price, thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, after review at the February 14, 2017 meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended to Council that the request for property at 740 Teague Street be rezoned from single-family residential to general business be denied, citing the zoning is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and neighborhood compatibility and the potential intensity to which the general business parcel may be developed by right. At the April 24th City Council meeting, Rural Health Services, the applicant and owner, requested that the rezoning of the .3264 acres at 740 Teague Street from single-family residential be changed to limited professional rather than general business. The property is located near the Clyburn Center for Primary Care. The property at 740 Teague Street is bordered by undeveloped land, which is owned by Rural Health Services, Inc. The applicant intends to renovate the existing single-family residence and use it as a medical office space for case managers and enrollment staff for the Clybourne Center. This rezoning request was removed from the February 27, 2017 City Council agenda at the request of the applicant so that they could have time to meet with residents in the area regarding the rezoning request. After meeting with residents in the area, Rural Health Services is requesting rezoning as limited professional and has agreed to the following conditions with limited professional zoning. 1, that there must be a buffer between the subject property and the adjacent residential property to the north. Number 2, no parking shall be allowed on the subject property. Number 3, the parking for the subject property shall be accommodated at the Clyburn Center for Primary Care at 1000 Clyburn Place. Number 4, the access to the subject property shall be provided from the property occupied by the Clyburn Center for Primary Care at 1000 Clyburn Place. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the April 24, 2017 meeting. For City Council consideration, a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone property at 740 Teague Street from residential single-family to limited professional with the conditions as agreed upon by Rural Services Clyburn Center for Primary Care and the residents of the surrounding area.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Is there any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to point out for the record that Councilmember Diggs has left the room and recused herself from these discussions because she is an employee of Rural Health Services.
Duly noted. Thank you, Gary. All right, hearing none, all those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous, of course, with the recusal of Councilwoman Diggs. Thank you.
Just want to thank Ms. Cooper and her daughter for their active participation in this and their hard work out in that area. Thank you so much.
Well, my kids ain't been on training in agreement. It takes two.
Righty. Moving down the agenda. Number 3, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to grant an easement to all telecommunications on property at the intersection of Town Creek Road and Seven Oaks Drive. By title, an ordinance authorizing the City of Aiken to grant an easement to all telecommunications LLC. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Ebner. Mr. Mary? Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have received a request from Alltel Communications LLC for an easement at the intersection of Town Creek Road and Seven Oaks Drive. The easement is needed to be able to install additional cable lines between their equipment at the existing cell tower and the Seven Oaks Drive right-of-way. Our city attorney has reviewed the draft easement agreement. A one-time payment for the easement would be $2,000 by Alltel Communications LLC. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the April 24th meeting. For City Council consideration, a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to grant an easement to Alltel Communications LLC on property at the intersection of Town Creek Road and Seven Oaks Drive.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from audience? Comments from council? All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down old business. Number 4, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex 853 Osborne Drive pursuant to the City Water Sewer Annexation Policy. By title, an ordinance to annex to the corporate limits of the City of Aiken certain property owned by Antonio Washington and located at 853 Osborne Drive, and to zone the same residential single-family RS-15. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor, though he's reluctant about when to come in, but
Second.
Councilwoman Price, second by Councilman Dewar. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, Antonio Denzel Washington, owner and applicant, has requested annexation of 853 Osborne Drive pursuant to the City Water Sewer Annexation Policy, which was adopted by City Council on September 12, 2016. Mr. Washington is requesting annexation and zoning of the property at residential single-family. The property is located near Crosland Park. The Planning Commission, at their April 11, 2017 meeting, reviewed the request for annexation and unanimously recommended approval for annexation and residential single-family zoning. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the April 24, 2017 meeting. For City Council consideration, a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex 853 Osborne Drive and zone it residential single-family.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? I would say, I think we had talked to Ryan. Ryan, did you run the cost analysis on this? If you want to come up, I'd be interested in.
We didn't. We ran the cost estimate and provided it to Mr. Washington. We've been creating some generic scenarios for folks ever since. But in his particular case, taking a guesstimate on the value of his vehicle, it was about a $30 difference.
Right, $30.
$30 for yeah, and that was about $100,000 ballpark for a purchase price on a home.
Very good, very good.
I didn't understand that.
In other words, the difference between being in the city and having public safety and the city amenities and being out in the county, it may cost $30 more a year. And I think that's under the assumption that he doesn't use any of the recreational areas.
That's not taking into account any private refuse service.
I think what he's saying is a pretty good deal. All righty. I think we need to vote. All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And I would just add to that one item that I hope, and I'm under the understanding that we're working on a document that is going to let everybody make that comparison, the advantages of being in the city versus the county.
If we could maybe work up some sort of spreadsheet on our webpage so that people can go in and work that cost analysis up. Might be something to work towards.
And as a recommendation, staff met with the Board of Realtors this last week, and we have several scenarios that we've created, kind of generic scenarios that we will make available on the website. Sent them over to Finance for review just to make sure they're correct, but we will have those available shortly.
Great.
Can you email those to us as soon as they come out of Finance?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate your work on that. All right, number 5, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance authorizing the City of Aiken to waive its right of first refusal for the property owned by South Carolina Metals, LLC, located in Ventures Industrial Park. By title, an ordinance authorizing the City of Aiken to waive its right of first refusal on the property owned by South Carolina Metal Products, LLC, and located in Ventures Industrial Park. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
Thank you, Councilman Duar, Councilman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the City of Aiken sold Lot 16 in Ventures Industrial Park to SC Metals LLC in 2005 for a manufacturing facility. SC Metals LLC would like to sell their rights to BTD South Carolina LLC to continue its use as a manufacturing facility. The city has the first right of refusal for this property and would need to approve the sale of the property. Ventures Industrial Park was primarily designed for possible airport-related operations near the runways and industrial clients elsewhere. Currently, there is one other heavy manufacturing plant located in the park. We have included the covenants for the park, which describes permitted and prohibited uses in Ventures. Attached is the request by the legal counsel for SC Metals LLC, asking the city for a waiver of the right of first refusal and to approve the sale of BTD South Carolina LLC. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the April 24th meeting. For City Council consideration, a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance authorizing the City of Aiken to waive its right of first refusal in the property owned by SC Metals LLC located in Ventures Industrial Park.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Councilman Mary, if you want to see if you can close a blind, I know that's right in your eye.
There's a way to do it.
All right, moving down the agenda. New business. First reading of an ordinance to transfer 4 unimproved lots to Second Baptist Community Development Corporation. An ordinance approving the sale of 4 properties in Crosland Park to Second Baptist Community Development Corporation. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Price has a motion. Is there a second? Good. All right, Councilman Moki, appreciate that. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, after recent discussions that we had regarding housing in Aiken, the Second Baptist Community Development Corporation has expressed an interest in acquiring 4 city-owned properties in Crosland Park that are presently vacant lots. The properties are at 1406 Wyman Street, 1269 Alfred Street, 660 Summer Street, and 679 Summer Street. Staff is recommending that the city transfer these properties to Second Baptist CDC for $1 per property. Second Baptist has been a longtime partner of the city in North Side revitalization and has a proven track record with other housing partners. Their success can be seen in the DuPont Landing project. Second Baptist CDC has made workforce housing more accessible in Aiken through their partnerships with Nehemiah CRC and the Bennett Group. Currently, the City of Aiken and Second Baptist CDC have partnered for the Neighborhood Initiative Program in Crosland Park and the 400 and 500 blocks of Abbeville Ave with an agreement with Second Baptist CDC and Nehemiah CRC to develop the Abbeville area into workforce housing. For City Council consideration is first reading and public hearing of an ordinance to transfer 4 unimproved lots in Crosland Park to the Second Baptist Community Development Corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to new business. This is first reading of an ordinance amending the city code regarding electronic cigarettes and the smoking regulations by title, an ordinance amending section 22-65 of the Aiken City Code to remove electronic cigarettes from the smoking regulations. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
Motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, at the April 24, 2017 council meeting, the council approved on second reading an ordinance amending the smoking regulations, restricting the use of electronic cigarettes in all enclosed public places in the city. We have received a request that council reconsider this ordinance, which bans the use of electronic cigarettes in all enclosed public places in the city. The ordinance passed on April 24th included e-cigarettes on the list of smoking products, which are prohibited from use in enclosed public places. The proposed ordinance before council tonight would remove e-cigarettes from the list of prohibited smoking products. By passing this ordinance, use of e-cigarettes would be allowed in enclosed public places. For City Council consideration is first reading and public hearing of an ordinance to amend the smoking regulations to remove electronic cigarettes from the smoking regulations in enclosed public places.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. I'll say I've asked for this to be for reconsideration. I think the scope was broader than what I certainly intended and thought it was. I was under the impression when we discussed it, and it was my error, but I was under the impression that it was for city properties, and we talked specifically about parks when it was brought up to us. So that was my understanding as I went back and we read this and had a conversation about it. It was just a broader spectrum than what I anticipated or thought it was. So I'd rather take care of this now than it be misinterpreted down the road. So, and I have asked, John Boynton's here. John, I'd like to ask you, I know you run a store that deals with these cigarettes, and I was wondering if you could spend a few minutes maybe giving us a presentation on exactly what it is that an e-cigarette. I think there was a lot of conversation wondering, so I thought it would be great to have you come in, and
I figured it would be a bad idea for me to bring my vape here and
Appreciate that.
show you what it's
Appreciate
like
that.
here at City Council. But I appreciate your reconsideration and councilmen and women on this particular ordinance. It was news to me. It was a surprise to me, and I reached out to the mayor with my concerns about the decision that was made in regards to this ordinance. Yes, I own a vape shop, and I started VaporTech USA. It's located on Whiskey Road in my garage about 5 years ago, and started, shipping electronic cigarettes all across the world. And I became very passionate about e-cigs, and I hate we even adopted the terminology of e-cigarette because, quite frankly, vaping is not smoking, and that's one of the reasons why I have a difficult time sweeping vaping under the umbrella of smoking, because it's not. There's a big difference between setting a cigarette on fire, which is combusting, versus vaping and vaporizing a liquid. Vaping changed my life, changed my dad's life. It's changed tons and tons of friends of mine's lives. They've been able to get off of traditional analog type cigarettes, and they've been able to start vaping. So when I reached out to the mayor, I expressed some concerns to him about this particular ordinance, and I still don't have the entire verbiage. But one of my concerns was the city basically telling me or any other city or business owners within the city of Aiken that they can or cannot allow people to vape in their store. Now, I would venture to say 99, probably 0.9% of any establishment's not going to allow you to smoke, and they're not going to allow you to vape. That's sensible. That makes sense. I don't want to be in a restaurant with people that smoke, and I quite frankly don't want to be in a restaurant with somebody blowing vape all over me. My other concern was, does this particular ordinance cover if I'm walking down the sidewalk within the city limits of Aiken? Does it cover the sidewalk at the Cork and Bull, or does it cover anywhere downtown? Can people sit outside and smoke within the city limits of Aiken or vape within the city limits of Aiken? I don't know. We, in the vape industry, we want there to be one sensible regulation, and it makes sense to not be able to smoke or vape in any city park. It makes sense, you know, to not be able to vape in the alley if there's large crowds there. And the other part of it too is just to make sure that those that are making decisions in regards to the vape industry in general, that they are educated decisions, not decisions that are made based off of what you see on the news or what you see other municipalities doing. And my last thought was, I was thinking when I was riding over here, I was like, this is Aiken, South Carolina. I didn't think that I was, you know, going to have to come and talk to you guys about vaping, and I even opened up, any of you are welcome to come into my vape shop just to learn. But we're also we're not New York City where we're telling people they can't have large fries and big drinks. I can understand if y'all's regulations are city-owned properties, like I mentioned before, parks and that kind of stuff. So I think my 5 minutes is up. I appreciate y'all allowing me to come and present this, and there's not a, if you're interested in really learning about the vaping industry and truly how life-changing it has been for thousands of people within the city of Aiken, feel free to give me a call or stop by. But I appreciate y'all's consideration. If there's any questions that you have, or I can help y'all in making the educated and informed decisions on electronic cigarettes, I'm here for anything that you need. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused. You made the comment that you didn't think people should be able to vape in a restaurant.
Correct.
Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, then I'm a little confused as to what we're doing tonight, because I thought that originally the intent was to prohibit this device in city-owned property.
Right.
Correct.
And what we ended up doing was treating it as a cigarette.
Right.
So now what are we doing with this ordinance?
You're going back to what the old ordinance said, and the old ordinance just refers to any lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, or other lighted tobacco product in any manner or in any form. Now, the parks, you're able to prohibit vaping in the parks because it's your property, and you can pass a regulation to do what you want to with that. That's what Jessica Campbell did through the Parks and Recreation Department.
Yes,
Does that
okay.
take a resolution, Gary?
And she's already, no, it does not. What this says, this goes back to make it clear that you are not including vaping as part of the prohibited activities in public places in the city of Aiken.
Including restaurants.
Correct.
But we have not passed anything in relation to city-owned property of parks.
Correct.
She was going to write a exemption under Section 25 or whatever that was, where we could make that determination?
I would rely on Jessica. My understanding, talking with the city manager, was that they were just informing you that they were letting patrons of the park know that they were not allowed to vape in the parks, because that's
what I was
city-owned
told.
public property. But there was no need for a regulation or a resolution to be passed by council.
One other question. The next thing coming down the pike from the owners of Philip Morris is where they're going to heat the tobacco. Notice I said heat. You got a red hot item in there, just like vaping, heating pure tobacco. So the nicotine comes out as a vapor. So I guess that's the same thing as vaping.
Well, I mean, I would take it as they are actually putting the tobacco on top of a coil. When you're vaping, you're not putting a leafy substance on top of a coil. You are actually vaporizing e-liquid. So there's a big difference between, and if you're putting that tobacco on top of a coil, you're still combusting it, and it's still smoke.
Okay.
Smoke does not come out of an e-cigarette. Vapor comes out of an e-cigarette.
Okay. I won't get technical about the chemistry
Well,
of
feel
it.
free to stop by with all your questions. My concern was it says certain public places. It says in 2008, the city of Aiken created smoking regulations that prohibit smoking in certain public spaces within the city. Do we know what those certain public spaces are? Is that defined? What's a public space? Is the alley a public space? Or are we talking about parks? Are we talking about Hopeland Gardens? You know, so the big thing for this ordinance is a little clarification so that down the road with future, council, that we don't have issues with this particular ordinance on the book. So I would like to know what a certain public place is.
Sure.
Because then it progresses into, the verbiage changes a little bit, and it says electronic cigarettes and/or cigarettes in public places. So what's the difference between a certain public place, and what are those certain public places, and what is a public place?
What that says is that city council has reconsidered the banning of electronic cigarettes in public places. And so they're taking that out of the equation.
Okay.
But a city park, if you're in a city park or you're on a city-owned property, there'll be a sign that tells you it's not allowed. Okay, just like there is
Right.
at the building. And so, that's just the city regulating its own property.
Right.
There is no prohibition against you walking down the street with a vapor.
Okay.
And John, as I told you on the phone, this was just broader than what I anticipated from our conversations, and that's why I wanted to,
Yeah.
and I think council, as a consensus, wanted to get it corrected.
But I appreciate the opportunity to, I know a lot of people are not educated about vaping and they wonder what it is. But if you have any more questions, feel free to get in contact with me. Thanks
Thank you
your
for
time.
being here tonight.
All right.
Appreciate it. Jessica, Jessica Campbell, our Park and Rec Director, would you mind clarify what parks exactly are we talking about?
It's a
And what
PRT
we've already done,
policy,
right.
so that's why it's not an ordinance. PRT policy, all of our parks, playgrounds, Citizens Park to Hopeland's Gardens, Eustis Park to Calmia Hill. I mean, there's a large list, but
And so is that already posted?
we are rolling that out. Signs have been made. They're ready to be installed. We won't enforce it till June 1st, so we are in the process this month of beginning that notification to the public, our park patrons, and we'll make sure media is contacted. But signs are ready to be installed.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm still a little bit confused on what's a public place? The Etheridge Center, public place?
It's in the county.
I mean, I think, and I'll let the attorney answer this one, but.
I'm pretty confident USC Aiken
Oh, I'm
would have
sure
a
they
policy
prohibit it,
against
but,
vaping. But that's their right to do that.
Yeah, but, so basically, if the county did not take under consideration prohibiting smoking in the Etheridge Center, the law says, or the ordinance says we could.
Right.
But for sake of clarity, if the city owns it, you can't smoke or vape.
Right.
If the city doesn't own it, it's up to the individual property owner for vaping.
Correct.
And on restaurants, bars, and all that,
Up to the individual owner.
city limits, there's no smoking.
Right.
Then I-
Correct.
One more question. Who owns the alley? Or is it dependent on the individual property owners in there?
There's no prohibition in the city of Aiken against smoking outside. You can smoke outside and walk down the street. That's not against the law.
So you can actually smoke walking down the alley?
I believe that's
Didn't
correct.
somebody just say so about
I
5-10
believe that's
minutes ago that we couldn't?
No, no.
Maybe I misheard.
All right. Very good. Hearing no more discussion. All those in favor on first reading?
We'll have that same discussion again at second reading. I said,
There
well,
was a question, Mr. Mayor, in the audience.
I apologize. I didn't see, was it, someone had a question?
You're going to allow them to vape in the restaurant?
It's not up to us. It's the, it's up to the restaurants as it currently is. What we were trying to address was city properties, and it was just broader than what our intent was. So. All right, thank you. Moving down to petitions and requests. Number 1, request to approve a fireworks display on July 4th, 2017 at the Reserve Club at Woodside Plantation. Is there a motion?
I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, since 2003, the Woodside Plantations Reserve Club has held a fireworks show every July 4th. For many years, this event was approved administratively, but in 2014, the state fire marshal regulations changed. To be in compliance with our city code, City Council needs to officially approve this event. As in previous years, the clubs pay for public safety officers and equipment to be present during the show and will follow all applicable state and local regulations and ordinances. For City Council approval is a request for a fireworks display on July 4th at the Reserve Club at Woodside Plantation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And it's a great fireworks show, by the way. Number 2, under petitions and requests, is a request to spend CPSC 3 funds to replace pumps and install variable speed drives on the booster pumps at the East Pine Log Water Treatment Plant and the Lawrence Street Water Storage Tank. Is there a motion?
I so move.
All right, Councilwoman Diggs has a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, one of the projects in the Capital Project Sales Tax 3 infrastructure upgrade plan is the replacement of the East Pine Log Water Treatment Plant high-speed pumps, which are over 30 years old, and install variable frequency drives on the booster pumps. There are 6 booster pumps at this location. We also propose to replace the 2 Lawrence Street water tank booster pumps and install the variable frequency drives on those pumps as well. Last year, the Utilities Division initiated a project to install variable frequency drives on our booster pumps at our in-ground water storage tanks, and will install 7 variable frequency drives at the Town Creek and Silver Bluff water treatment plants. We are now proposing to replace 3 of the 6 booster pumps at East Pine Log with pumps that will operate with variable frequency drives. Currently, the booster pumps are turned on manually by water treatment plant operators depending on the changes in pressure seen at the various water plants. When the turn-on booster pumps to provide more water to the system, the pumps come to full pressure within 2 to 3 seconds, which sends a pressure shock wave along the water distribution pipes. This causes stress on our aging water pipes and can result in breaks in the lines where pipes may be overstressed. The variable speed drives on these pumps will be programmed to start the pumps gradually over a length of time, which will eliminate the pressure surge shock wave. Our controls will also be reprogrammed to provide operators with control over the rates that the booster pumps are set. The cost to replace the pumps and install the variable speed drives on the booster pumps at the East Pine Log Water Treatment Plant and at the Lawrence Street Tank and to reprogram the system is $422,962, which includes a 5% contingency. For City Council consideration is approval to spend $422,962 from CPSD 3 Water System Infrastructure Upgrades projects to replace pumps and install variable speed drives on the booster pumps at East Pine Log Road at the Lawrence Street tank. Mr. Mayor, we do have Public Works staff here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Moving now petitions and requests number 3. This is approval to spend Capital Projects 2 sales tax money with Clemson University for the Hitchcock Woods Stormwater Project. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, as part of the Hitchcock Woods Stormwater Project, the council approved the formation of a task force to address erosion caused by stormwater discharge into Hitchcock Woods. The task force is composed of members of the City Council, the Hitchcock Woods Foundation, and private citizens, and we do have some of our dedicated members of our task force present this evening. To assist McCormick Taylor, our consultants, the task force unanimously recommends to the City Council that we spend up to $150,000 with Clemson University to provide the following deliverable items. 1, support Hitchcock Woods Task Force and McCormick Taylor through high spatial resolution water quantity monitoring that will enable the development of resilient solutions to reduce erosion flow into the Sand River watershed. 2, continue quantifying the hydrologic flows during storm events draining to and within the downtown Aiken stormwater system that constitutes Sand River headwaters. 3, monitor weather activity at up to 10 new locations through the watershed areas. 4, install streaming cameras that will provide still photos during storm events to understand stream flow conditions. 5, to quantify storm hydrologic flows draining from 2 new watershed areas into Hitchcock Woods. 6, based on storm event flows to help McCormick Taylor evaluate and optimize potential locations for further study. 7, support the use of GIS modeling to evaluate and optimize potential locations for further green infrastructure installation in any of the watersheds, including analysis for hydrology and cost effectiveness. 8, to enhance site-level remote data acquisition capabilities through the watersheds and integrate associated collection, transmission, display, and archival facilities into the Intelligent River Network. And 9, to disseminate the results to the Hitchcock Woods Task Force and the McCormick Taylor, as well as the regional design engineers, the site developers, the municipal and county stormwater management staff, state environmental agencies, landscape architecture, academics and professionals, planning agencies, and peer review journals. The money for this would come from CPST 2. So for council approval is an expenditure of up to $150,000 to Clemson University to provide professional services for the Hitchcock Woods Storm Water Project. And as you know, there are several members of our council that serve on this task force, and we do have representatives from the task force here if you have any questions of them.
Is there anyone here from the Clemson team?
Yes.
If I could ask a question, if you'd come up, please. Thank you for being here tonight. Of the 9 points, one thing when I was looking over the agenda, I was just curious. It seems like some of the, I think the GIS modeling, I've seen some presentations that were already, I guess, already happening with that. Is this in addition to what we're already doing? I mean, expanding the scope or?
It's, the GIS and modeling is based on the new data. So it would just be, a lot of it is working with McCormick Taylor just to support their efforts. So yeah, there's new modeling and efforts, but it's really, that's not a major part of the proposal. But anyway, I'm Chris Post with Clemson University. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate you being here. So what, and I guess one thing we get accused of a lot is over studying. But I want to say I've been really pleased with the task force. I get reports and Dr. Shealy and everyone who's participating in it. I think we're moving in a great direction with Hitchcock. What do you see Clemson doing to assist this in a different manner than what they've been doing in the past?
So I think we're really, with the data we've gotten, the kind of missing part to help with that are the weather stations, and I've actually acquired, it's a total of about $50,000 that I'm bringing to the table from other grants, including the weather stations themselves, to add in some spatial information, because, it rains on one side of town and not the other, so we'll be able to tie that into the stormwater monitoring we presently have, and then importantly, add Dibble Road and Highland Park and Coker Springs and some other areas that are also contributing to this problem that have not been monitored in the past. So,
Well, very good.
Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. Thank you. Thank you for expanding on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, if I could. A couple quick questions. First, it says to quantify the storm hydrologic flows draining from 2 watershed areas. How many total watersheds are there again on this?
So there's the major contributor is really the downtown area, that we call the Sand River watershed, and then
Right.
there's Dibble Road, what we're going to start monitoring, and Highland Park, which is kind of part of that. And Kelly Krusner is my on-site engineer, so.
So Dibble Road is what you're referring to as Highland Park here?
No, it's 2 separate areas. So Highland Park is some flows right below the railroad trestle going into the Hitchcock Woods. And Dibble Road is the large pipe, and then there's Kelly, if you want to add anything. Yeah, there's 8 total
Yes,
watersheds. Yeah, I don't
okay,
have
that's
it in
what I
front of
thought. I just
Yeah,
saw this talking about 2, but you're really capturing more than 2, either through already existing
And this is
infrastructure.
based on the priorities of the task force. So the Dibble Road is a high priority, Highland Park as well, and Coker Springs is another high priority, if I recall.
I mean, what I'm wanting to do is get a handle on as much of it as possible, is what it amounts to.
Yeah, it was the focus of the
Even though
task force.
we've always kind of known where the primary sources of the water were, still just get as big a view as possible.
Exactly, and looking forward to potential stream restoration and other water retention to help with the Sand River.
What, if
It's important to know.
anything, remains functional on the sensors that have been put in those areas before? We, some years ago, had some put in that would supposedly measure and quantify flow rates and all that kind of thing. Is any of that still
Yeah,
in place and
part of
working?
this is to keep that going, and the reason to keep that going is because we're going to have the weather stations to help further pin that down. But we really have a lot of information.
Correlate the flow with the weather. and so
With
forth.
where it rains and everything else, but we have a lot of information for that, and now we're adding in the 2 additional areas.
Okay, so that stuff still works?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you on the original team, you and Kelly?
Yes, I wasn't leading the original team.
You were part of it?
I
What
was
about
part of
Kelly?
it. Yes.
Because I have a couple questions, please, ma'am. So both of you have been there since the inception. How much money have we spent on this project?
Good question.
That's a great question.
52,000 was the other, was the
52 was
first
the original.
authorization. If I can interject a little bit, I'm going to be as nice as I can. We specifically asked for some of these 9 things in that 352,000, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Shealy, and I had put some things in the contract that were never honored in that first one. And I credit Ms. Kelly Cruz, and she has gone back over the data that's been collected and filtered out the good and the bad, so to speak, that wasn't done before. And now McCormick and Taylor is actually using that data and getting some credible results of the speed of the water and where it's coming from. So these 9 items, we specifically discussed these at the last meeting so that we know what we're getting for our money this time. And most of this produces technical data. This is not experimental work or PhD degrees or anything.
No, this is very much focused on getting the additional data needed so that McCormick Taylor can recommend specific ways to solve this problem.
And we've been studying this for how long?
I have been a part of this project for 3 years, I believe. When we installed the sensors downtown 3 years ago.
And that was not the first
Mr.
phase of
Remoki?
it.
Yeah.
I got a question. I'm a part-time attendant at your meetings. we've looked at, or we're looking at 4 of the 8 sources that feed into Hitchcock Woods. Now, are we any further along to figure out what the possible resolution of the problem could be by getting the data from these 4 places? And are we going to be tied to increasing the monitoring and collecting data on the other 4 before we can actually come to a decision?
That's a great point, and thank you for asking that question. The reason we're not monitoring all 8 is because there's a dam in one location, there's a pond at the golf course with a spillway. So it's not, those are not, and they go into areas that are not, where there's not a lot of erosion in the Sand River. So we're not expecting those to be large contributors because there's things that hold the water back at most of those other sub-watersheds that are going in there. So no, this isn't a trick. We're going to do 3 and then we're going to come back and we're going to add more later. So we feel, and this is the, this is the direction from the task force as well, that this focus will provide the missing pieces to really solve this problem eventually. And that's what McCormick Taylor is.
Study to end all studies?
What everything no, but this is again, this is very much, and that's what's so exciting about this is that really you're getting a lot of places and towns make decisions without data, and we have very good data, and this is the last piece that I think we need.
I got one more. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
With the data you already have, what are the top 3 possible solutions to the problem?
It's too early, probably.
So, well, I mean, to credit McCormick Taylor, and I wish they were here to address that, they're already coming up with proposed solutions that involve retaining, and I don't want to speak for them, but generally retaining water to reduce flows for a certain level of storm.
For just the downtown area, though.
That's for just the downtown area.
Just the downtown area.
Based on our original data. So that's their, and I'm just paraphrasing. I wish they were here to answer.
But none of that's been presented to the committee yet. I mean, that's just preliminary work by them. That's not been presented to the whole committee, has it?
No, it was discussed at the last task force meeting. It was preliminary, but to be honest, it was impressive.
So then, okay, so there has been some conversation with the task force on that particular topic.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
That was the last
they
meeting.
actually presented the clarified data that Ms. Kelly did, and using 2 different formats of the presentation of the data, depending on how the projected rainfall is and the flow of the water, and have projected some speeds in relation to the pickup of the sand, the type of sand clay that's in the Sand River. So we're getting down, I'd call it getting down into the dirt, if you will. We're actually doing calculations to the point, you're probably actually dealing with basic data, I would call it now. And research, R&D is kind of in the past. We want real data to be able to measure and do calculations. At our next meeting, I would expect McCormick and Taylor to even start breaking down the Sand River Basin into there's 5 or 6 areas and telling us what kind of water flows are in those areas. So we're getting down in the basic data.
I'm kind of frustrated, quite frankly. I think you and I are heading in the same area, Councilwoman Price. We were assured when we approved the last pot of money to go to this project that the results would be something substantive. I was expecting that we would be told who's responsible for the stormwater problems in the different parts, all 8. I thought at one point when I started there were 7, now there's 8, into the 8 elements, or 8 entrants to the city. I mean, we've studied this thing for years, and here we are, we want to study more, and we want to study flow in different areas. I mean, I've got a constituent that sent me an email today. She's enraged with the damage it's doing at Hounds Lake. I've talked to somebody in the audience that's upset that nothing's happening on Clark Road. I mean, our folks want to see something happening, and with all due respect, I know what you're doing is probably fine. Reggie and I are usually on the same page, but we're not here. I'm just frustrated. I thought we'd get to see some solutions at some point in time, and how long is this study going to take? And And what kind of, when will we ever get to a solution? Excuse me, a solution?
No, I mean, our initial data is providing what McCormick and Taylor is using to propose solutions, and there were proposed initial solutions at the last task force meeting. So I think we're at that point. We don't have any data, and it wasn't included in the original project, to get information from Dibble Road and Highland Park and Coker Springs. And those should be the last major contributing areas into the watershed, and that's the direction. I'm sorry?
And Clark Road.
And Clark Road, excuse me. As soon as the city does some fixes there, we'll be able to monitor it. And I've been at those locations.
Just really a basic question. What do you need to know about Clark Road before you fix it? I mean, we know there's a lot of water that goes in there. We know it's doing damage. I mean, it's probably the same for all of the entrances. So why is it important that we know how much water flows in there before we can develop a plan to at least fix, let's pick on Clark Road. Why can't we fix Clark Road?
Well, I mean, the city has allocated some money, as I understand it, and is going to address some of the, I've seen the damage. It looks like an earthquake has gone through there. But we've been asked by the task force to include monitoring there so we understand how much is contributing into the total Sand River. I mean, it's all about how much water is coming from different areas so you can deal with it. If you don't know how much water is there, then you can't really propose a solution. And after spending millions and millions of dollars, we'll come back and say, oh, we did the wrong thing. So what we're doing is using real data to come up with a real solution.
Well, if we, and I'm picking on Clark Road again, if we fix Clark Road, I mean, that's got to benefit the ultimate solution, whatever that ultimate solution ends up being, would it not?
Well, I don't know what you mean by fix Clark Road. I mean, at some point, some of that water has to be slowed down to come into the Sand River. I'm not sure about the exact solution in Clark Road and what that will entail.
But, well, let's go to the worst part, then, the main downtown area.
Right.
I mean, we've seen the massive damage that the stormwater flows down there.
Right.
And again, I'm not the technical guy on council, but it seems to me that if you're going to slow the water down, you either got to make a detention/retention pond, or you got to build some massive tanks that are going underground that are going to hold the water, and then you control its release so that it doesn't do the damage. I mean, that's ultimately, one of those two things is ultimately got to happen, does it not?
Yes, and those are the solutions, the potential solutions that McCormick Taylor.
That's what I was hoping we would get from the last pot of money that we approved.
Well, we didn't. We didn't.
Mr. Mayor, let me just add that you mentioned that we want to determine how much water is flowing in the Sand River, and that was the pitch when we first started talking about this more than 3 years ago. And what I hear from citizens is that our parks are dug up, they're mosquito infested, and we still don't have an answer. Now, if we approve this tonight, here is another $150, which is $500,000. And we still don't have an answer to our taxpayers. So that's what we're looking at. Maybe something is being done, but if we still can't determine water flow after 3 years.
I mean, in all respect, I mean, the data that we've used, that has been given to McCormick Taylor, and that's how they're able to get solutions. So for the downtown area, and that's how without that data, what they could propose may not work. So no, there are direct deliverables in what we've accomplished.
So we pay you to capture the data. You turn that data over to McCormick.
No, we did a lot of analysis, modeling, and other things that were shared with McCormick, so they could do what they're doing very quickly.
So, what's quickly? I don't know how to define quickly.
Did they start in December, I believe?
Yeah, they started in December.
And they're currently working on solutions now that they presented preliminaries to the task force in the last meeting that they had. I'm sorry, I believe it was the beginning of
So there
April.
is preliminary that's been given to the task force. Information.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, can we hear from the task force? I mean, you're the folks that contracted apparently with this company, and I mean, I'm surprised to see Clemson back into it, quite honestly.
Because they were
prob-
out.
You probably never got out, but I did, I mean, I know that last study was with Clemson before
Yeah,
Dr.
and for the
Eisen.
last year and a half, we've been funding this through other grants to keep this going. So, and I'm bringing another 50.
Which is good as far as the city is concerned. We love those other grants.
No, I'm
Well,
looking for more
I
opportunities.
think we can certainly hear from, of course, Reggie and Steve both serve on that task force as well. As I know Dr. Shealy's here, Jim is here, so.
Go back and look at my records, because I thought that we spent much more money than what's being discussed, but I've got.
Well, over the years we have, because this has been.
Well, it's a 25-year problem.
Well, I think.
Shealy can address the history better than I can. but-
I'd like to thank y'all for
Studied
coming
for
up.
25 years.
We appreciate you being here and answering those. And I think the reason Clemson is either one of you guys who serve on it, appreciate you being here, or both is fine, but
Thank you, Mayor. We're coming together to show harmony.
Harmony later, but that'll have to be later. I can help you with a lot of these things you're asking. There are 8 basins that drain into about 5,200 acres of land into Hitchcock Woods, the worst of which is Sand River coming out near South Boundary, and that one is horrible. The sidewalls of that canyon are probably 75, 80 feet. When DHEC first came down at their own initiation, they came down, there was a person signed to look at Hitchcock Woods from DHEC. We said, but the big thing, he said, yeah, I see those all the time. He went over there and he was impressed. He said, I don't see these all the time. He's actually brought some of his colleagues down to show them Sand River. When the city contracted to have the bioswales done, and when the city contracted with Clemson to monitor, they only monitored a certain portion. They only monitored this sort of upper Sand River. They never put monitoring devices on any of the other basins at all. And why they didn't do it, I don't know. But that contract was between the city and Clemson. We applauded it. I spoke on behalf of the last time we spent this type of money to do monitoring. I came and spoke about it. That was when Jim and I got to know each other. We were on different sides of the fence that time. But at any rate, we're on the same side now. But we have gotten some preliminary stuff from McCormick and Taylor, which looks very good. The goal of the Hitchcock Foundation is very simple. We want off-site detention, and we want the volume, not velocity per se, but the volume of water slowed down. The volume is the trick. And so at the last meeting, they talked about trying to find, based on the data that had been collected by Clemson, they talked about what they thought would be an adequate thing that would not damage the woods. They were looking at what they call 1950 levels, before the pavement really went down in Aiken, South Carolina. So there have been a lot of little things and iterations, and I'm amazed that I'm sort of sorry I know as much as I do. I've been trying to get off of the Stormwater Committee for the Hitchcock Foundation for the past 30 years, and I'm still the chair of it, and it looks like it's going to be until I die. But I hope that's not no time soon. But at any rate, I know I've done this for a long time, and you ask, how long have you studied it? You've studied it for at least 30 years, because that's how long I've been interacting with the city. And you have studied it. We also, when we started on this task force, said we don't want any more studies, and this is not a study. This is simply a way to collect good data, which we know they can do at Clemson, collect good data so that they can make some intelligent decisions. McCormick and Taylor can make intelligent decisions in what they set up on Dibble Road entrance to the woods. We call it the Tea Cottage entrance. But at that entrance, that's our second worst drainage area. You can't see it. It's all overgrown with vegetation. But if you want to, I'll take you down there one day and show it to you. It's horrible. It's another Sand River in the making, is all it is. So it's our second priority. Well, when we got the McCormick and Taylor report, there was no data on the flow coming into that area, where it was coming from, how fast it was coming, or anything anything like that. I will tell you this, in a good rainstorm, you shouldn't cross the bridge down there at Brown Drive because it gets overflown with water. It actually disappears. That's how much water comes down that way. So I just tell you that. So this was simply in a way to address this. While they're collecting the data, not studying it, but collecting the data on that particular sub-basin, we hope that McCormick and Taylor will be working on the fixes for the upper Sand River regions of the flood of the basin. Now, we haven't given up on any of the rest of them, but we just can't do them all at once. And if the city wants to address other ones while we're working on this, we're perfectly happy to buy into that. We don't have any objections.
If you're insisting on off-site detention for the stormwater, I mean, I'm not sure there's a solution.
Well, there is, and McCormick Taylor showed us some of it last time, and I was very encouraged by that.
Off-site?
Yes, sir.
Is that are you insisting on off-site for all 8 of them?
I don't know. They only showed us one, so we'd have to talk. They did show us.
Reggie,
He
can
will
you
agree. They showed us.
elaborate on that?
Where off-site?
Their initial calculations are for a 2-year storm, and that's one of the things that has to be determined, is that enough detention to do it. Once you get above a 2-year storm, you run out of city space to do it very quickly.
That's not a big storm.
No, it's not, but I want to tell you what we gathered from their data, and Kelly, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but some data that she gave us last year, there was a chart, and it was in April of 2016, and at the various points, I believe it rained like 0.06 in one place, 0.05 or 0.5, I can't remember, but it wasn't much of a rain, and it was extended over a 10-hour period, and during that 10-hour period in a very light rainfall last April, we got 35 million gallons of water through the Sand River pipe.
Yeah, the basin area is so large, there's such a large collection area.
And the pipes just funnel it down, grab it.
There's city property, Reggie, that the 2-year storm was proposed, 2-year storm pond was proposed on some city property?
The bulk of it is, yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, excuse me, state and city.
Okay.
I would suggest we let the task force move forward. Sounds like they're making progress, and
Well-
then maybe come forward with a report to everyone.
We would
Yeah,
like very much to recommend that, and that's what we did.
The only issue for me is, again, if we, and again, a 2-year study is not much. I mean, you just talked about a very small rain and the massive impact it had going into the woods. I mean, I'm not sure I see a solution if we've got to, if we can't put something inside the woods to help mitigate it.
That's where you've been putting it for years.
Well, we haven't done
You've
anything
been
for
putting it in
years.
the woods for years.
Yes,
sir.
I know that.
We're actually losing real estate.
Yeah.
We're suffering damage from it.
We're playing with words, Dr. Shealy, but the fact of the matter is, it's a mess in there.
I'm leaving it to McCormick and Taylor to come up with solutions. I'm not trying to figure them out tonight.
Well, it seems as though you dismissed the idea of using any land in the woods for mitigation of any sort, so.
We haven't dismissed anything. We've asked them to come up with a plan.
I misunderstood what you said then, that's
He will
fine.
come around.
Let me just, Mr. Mayor, let me just add this. I went online to look at the history, and this came before council in 2008. It's a $16 million project at that time that was estimated to get the work done. It's very detailed, it has 49 pages as to what's taking place. That was what was presented to City Council during Mayor Kavanaugh's days. And based on what I'm thinking, I know that you said $352,000. I think the estimate's more than that we've spent on that project, but nevertheless.
What you've spent since you started green infrastructure is about $5 million. You got a $3.3 million EPA grant, which I spoke vehemently against. You gave them $367,000 the last time of CPST money.
Which you spoke against.
To Clemson.
Right.
To Clemson, I spoke against it. But I'm here tonight to speak for what's going on. And as you know, Harry and I have been pulling on different ends of this rope for many years, but we are now pulling on the same end of the rope because I'm on the task force, he's on the task force. One thing that we did agree on as part of that $367,000 was a piece of it, which was the monitoring system. Now, Clemson found some other money to help fund that. They put in 8 monitoring systems within the stormwater discharge system so that they could, because they know that the board, or everybody knows that the board wants the solution off-site. My view is it'll be part off-site, it might be part on-site. But they overlaid the data that they got out of those 8 sensors. And then they found used the GIS system and some other systems that city has, vacant city-owned property to determine where could I put a piece of or some engineered storage system to handle part of the water going to Hitchcock Woods. And what they're asking for now is to extend that and get some more data to find ways, engineering ways of handling this, as much of this water as they can off-site. And so I support what they're doing. I'm very supportive of where McCormick Taylor is going. Harry and I, we still bump heads, but we are working together. And this is not just another study. This is to get real data so that McCormick Taylor can come forward with a engineering solution for a piece of this at a time. There is no one solution that's going to handle all of these 8 catchment areas. Mm-hmm. There'll be something over here, and the data that we're going to get out of this is what is the best engineered system for each piece of it. So I strongly support the $150,000. And this is a different crew, except for Kelly.
Jim, are you going to be able to identify who's responsible for what?
They've done that.
They've done it.
We got that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Can I say
unfortunately,
Can I say
there was a
something about-
miscommunication and that data isn't available tonight, and I didn't bring mine.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy, go ahead.
I got one quick question.
I just wanted to say one thing about the data that they've gotten. I could never find the data that was collected. You know, I asked Dr. Aiken, I've asked other people, where is the data? I asked Roger Leduc, where is the data? How can I get to it? Nobody could tell me. You paid for it, you hired them, but I couldn't find it. And when I got on this task force, I found out who was heading the Stormwater Institute at Clemson, and it was Dr. Post, Chris Post. And I called him up and I said, nobody seems to be able to find the data. Can you help me? And he said, oh, sure. I'll even try to come down and give a presentation. Then we saw the data. That was the first time I'd ever seen any data from anything that had been done. So I'm very heartened by it, which means that I really would like to see them get $150,000 so that they can complete this next phase that we're going to have to do, which is also going to be a massive phase, and see what they can find, you know. It's very helpful.
150, Dr. Shea, is not much considering we spent over $5 million with this project, and still to the taxpayers can't tell them what results we actually have.
Well, I totally agree with you, and I'm one of the taxpayers. And we have, this is all city stuff that's being done. We have never initiated any of the things ourselves.
Yeah, and that's where I want to stick my 2 cents in. I strongly support this proposal. I think, and I credit, I guess, Mr. Clem and staff with the idea, and maybe the mayor with the idea of creating this task force. This is the first time it's felt like to me, and I've been somewhat knowledgeable about this issue since I was a very young man, and Dr. Shealy used to tell me about it when I was 12, 13, 14 years old.
In the Grand Canyon down
Yeah, and this is the first time it's felt like that there's people all pulling in the same direction, to sort of perpetuate an analogy of pulling on a rope. But so I strongly support this with the hope that this, we've been told before that we were going to get real data, that is the hope that this does produce real data. And I really kind of think with the makeup of this task force that'll ensure that we get that real data that will be able to be applied and used towards some real solutions. You know, that, I think in the end, remember the old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have the data, if we just guesstimate and approximate, and we have garbage as far as information going in, we're never going to come up with a real solution. We've got to do this, but in the end, I think the challenge is going to be figuring out, as Mr. Dwyer said, figuring out exactly what can be done, exactly where it has to be done, and then exactly how it gets paid for. That's going to be the real hard part, but I very much support the proposal as it is, and counting on you guys to help make sure it becomes real data.
We're running out of CPST money because, you know, we only have a limited amount.
Philip, just for your information, of all the studies that the city has done to address this problem, we have agreed to allow them to do every single one of them, except one. And we did not like that. We hired a consultant to look at it. It didn't look right. And it really was not a good plan, and it wasn't going to hold up very long. So we said no to that one. Out of all the ones at the city, and there have been many that y'all have conducted on the thing, we've allowed every one of them to be done, even though the last one that you're referring to was the one that Mr. Aiken did, called the Ecological Restoration of the Sand River. He had 2 pipes running down the woods to a drop box right before it went into the Barton's Pond, which was going to act as a retention pond. The dam would be rebuilt, and it was going to be, it would act as a big retention pond down there. And we agreed to that. We agreed to the disruption of the woods and the 2 pipes and everything. And it was going along smoothly as far as we were concerned until the city heard how much it cost, which was $16 to $18 million. And we never heard another word. We never heard another word about it. It just sort of into the ether someplace. So we're not sticking on this thing, but it was going to be 16 to 18 million, and y'all said, ooh, well, we can find something else to do, I guess. You know, I would have if I'd been in your position, because it's going to cost a lot of money. But we said yes to that one.
I know you're going to post this, but let me just say that I'll support this because we have invested so much money, $5 million. And I don't do it with a good conscience because I have nothing to tell the taxpayers that I represent who want other things for humankind, that this is about for humankind. That we don't have.
This is for humankind. It's the well-being of one of the greatest assets in this town. A lot of people use it.
Well, let me just say that I'm talking about unsafe neighborhoods that.
See, and I understand it.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm
talking about crime, people killing each other. That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
but safety. But nevertheless, I will support this, not with a good conscience, because we have invested so much money already with over $5 million to move forward and see what this team can bring forth to council. And I suspect he should be able to tell us something when. 2 years, 3 years?
No, I think it'll be quicker than that. As a matter of fact, what I'd like to do is after we get through our budget process, which we're fixing to enter into, that'll give the task force a couple months also. I'd like to, after that process, have a meeting where for the task force to give us an update on where we're at, so.
Well, I respect Mr. Kelly. I've known him for a long time, and I know that we'll stay on task.
Well, I respect everybody on the task force. That's why I appointed them.
Thank you.
I agree with what Councilwoman Price says. I have great respect for the people on task force. And I'll support it. But again, I'm frustrated. I want to see the end of the solution. We have X amount of money in CPST. I'm not sure there'll be much more when we get out, because we have a massive infrastructure demand placed on the city right now that doesn't include Hitchcock Woods. So.
Okay.
I'm aware of that.
I think it's important to make this one point. Of the $5 million that's being thrown around here, the vast majority of that was not city of Aiken taxpayer money. Ours was a smaller portion. So for the people watching or that might be reading about it tomorrow or whatever, the city hasn't spent $5 million of city taxpayer money on this. Although it's still, I think her point is still a good one, but it's just not city tax dollars to the tune of $5 million.
Duly noted.
Let me just say that anytime we have a project, when you're spending money, it comes from somewhere. Give it whatever color you want, but it comes from somewhere.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Shealy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I'm not going to belinger this, but I know there's other people who may want to make a comment on this from the audience, so I open it up for comment from the audience at this time.
Okay.
All right. Comments from council?
Yeah, I've got a comment. I kind of alluded to it when I first asked the question. Does McCormick Taylor have any performance history in the past which actually shows a problem similar to ours that they resolve satisfactorily? Or is the solution going to be $15 or $18 million, and we should have stuck with, like Dr. Shealy said, we should have stuck with the $14 million solution?
Reggie, you've probably been as active on
Well,
maybe as anyone. Do you have any comments on
it
that?
depends on whose advertisement you read of their past projects. We interviewed, was it four? We interviewed four contractors that have done this similar work in South Carolina as well as other states. And there's gave us the best feeling, if you will, and that's what it is, a feeling as well as the engineering data they provided. And they provided the most data about Sand River to us. And that's how they were chosen to solve the problem, not to study it, but to come up with a solution and a price.
Very good.
You know, going back there, I don't think any past performance information that was given to us by any of those were similar to what we're talking about here.
Well, the river itself is unique without a doubt. The water going to it is not a unique problem. Mother Nature reigns everywhere. Right. And this has been, and I'll grumble about Dr. Eisen's report and City Manager Pierce and City Manager Ledoux. He didn't provide us the data. And I'm smart enough, and most everybody on council can take 1,215 and multiply it by how many inches it rains and figure out how much water you got. And now Ms. Kelly is taking the data and refined it down.
Let me just say I'm excited where and optimistic where our task force is, and look forward to meeting with them after our budget process.
It's working in the right direction.
All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down petitions and requests. And I appreciate those members of the task force who are here tonight, and appreciate you guys coming also. Number 4 is a request for approval to spend capital project sales tax funds for Phase 1B utility infrastructure improvements in downtown redevelopment project area. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, at the April 24th, 2017 meeting, the council approved for Phase 1A for utility work in the downtown redevelopment area. At that time, we told council that the public works staff would come back to the council at the May 8th, 2017 meeting with a recommendation and cost for design services associated with Phase 1B stormwater in the downtown redevelopment area. Our engineering staff has worked with consultants and has obtained a cost estimate of $24,500 for stormwater improvement plans in the downtown. The consultant will coordinate their analysis and design with the Hitchcock Woods Stormwater Task Force consultant, McCormick Taylor. Staff is recommending the use of CPST2 funds from CPST monies for City Council consideration as approval to proceed with professional services for stormwater improvement plans in the downtown development area with funding from CPST2. Now, staff has met several times on this issue, and we are at this point contemplating the possibility of hiring McCormick Taylor for this additional work. We obviously, and we received some very legitimate concerns from representatives of the Hitchcock Woods Foundation that they wanted assurances that the left hand knew what the right hand was doing in terms of what we're doing in the downtown area, and we think the best way to deal with that legitimate concern is hire McCormick Taylor for the downtown work as well. So that will be our recommendation. It is the recommendation of Public Works staff. We do have Public Works staff here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, is there any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from council?
I have a couple of comments.
Councilman Dwan?
Is this in any way changing our schedule that we were given? We're going to have this all done by next May?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So it'll be done by next May?
That's correct.
Now, what role will...
The only caveat to that is that the stormwater work is in state roads, and so there is the complication of having to get approvals.
What role will McCormick Taylor play in Phase 1A?
I'd have to check with Mr. Poole.
Ms. Poole, could you come forward?
Good evening, John.
John.
At this point, McCormick Taylor has played no role in Phase 1A. It is proposed that they play a role in the design with the Phase 1B.
Which is the big section.
Yeah, so it's the stormwater portion of Phase 1B.
Okay. And what role will they play?
They would be a design consultant, evaluate the data that we're currently collecting, and propose designs that would be complementary to the efforts that's going on with the Hitchcock.
I understand stormwater, that is going to be primarily a state function because Newbury is a state road.
Newbury's not a state road.
Yeah, that's...
Newberry, that part of that block's not a state road, between Richland and Park.
Newberry, Alley, all these areas, even though the alley's already completed, it will contribute stormwater to some of these other conveyances. So we do have some stormwater that's going into the system that's not just from state roads.
But Newbury is a state road.
Between Richland and Park is not, that's how it was made into a festival center.
Stuart could tell you how many years ago, but that's a city road.
When it was dedicated to being a festival center, it had to be deeded from the state to the city.
So that...
Is it actually transferred to the city?
I believe so. Because we don't have to close that road, we don't get SCDOT approval.
Well, now, if we have to do anything with sewer, now I guess we can do that thing where we wrap it around, and so we don't have to dig up the road and replace the pipe?
Yes, sir. We're planning the majority to be trenchless rehabilitation.
If we can do it, then they will tell us whether we can do it?
Yes, sir.
And you're still confident that it will all be finished by 1 May of next year?
This might actually help the schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
Bill,
Perry.
I have a question to ask John.
Ms.
John,
Price?
have we used McCormick and Taylor before?
Not to my knowledge. I have not personally used
They're
them.
out of Philadelphia?
Beanball.
They have an office in Columbia.
Okay.
And so we would be using staff from the Columbia office, but their headquarters is in Philadelphia, I believe.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
Could we verify that Newbury is out? That was a good question that somebody asked.
Do you have any other information on that?
It is, but he'll verify.
It is, okay.
It was dedicated in the late 2000s.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, under information, issues, and updates, anybody have anything for the good? Just so you know, we did not have a budget work session that was scheduled earlier. We're going to recess for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to have a quick budget work session. And then council also has to go back into executive session because we still have items to talk about there. So we're going to have a very quick budget work session. We're going to recess for 5 minutes. We'll meet in the 204 for that. And then council will go back into executive session after that. So what would be the right motion at this time? To adjourn the regular meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
And the motion to adjourn is subject to moving back into executive session after the work session.
My motion is amended as worded by the...
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please stand up. Steve, why'd you raise your hand?